Hello, anatomy students. We're going to talk today about the lymphatic system and the immune response. Let's first talk a little bit about the lymphatic system, and this is just going to be a brief overview, kind of the lymphatic system in a nutshell. The lymphatic system is responsible for fighting infection, but also for controlling fluid levels that are in our tissues, and it consists of tubes similar to blood vessels. They don't really mirror the path of blood vessels throughout the body, but they are tubes that are going to carry fluid back to the bloodstream. And the place where lymph, which is the fluid that is traveling through these vessels, re-enters the bloodstream is right up here in the subclavian veins and also the internal jugular veins. And so how does the lymphatic system work? Well, like I said, it's got a lot of tubes that are winding their way through the body. And the tubes themselves have blind ends, which basically means that the part that is found inside of the tissues is closed. And you can see that here. So all of these little cells that we have here, these gray cells, these are the cells of the tissue, and then you have the vessels, the lymphatic vessels here. You can see that it's closed off, and then running very close to it, you have a blood capillary with some erythrocytes that are running through there. Now, the cells of the tissues aren't dry. They're bathed in fluid, which is largely water, but it also contains some electrolytes. And the fluid and all that it carries, not just electrolytes, but waste products and possibly even microbes, are going to enter the lymphatic vessels through diffusion, and it's going to be carried through the lymphatic vessels and then back up to the veins that I mentioned, but not before it passes through lymph nodes. The lymph nodes are responsible for taking in the lymph, which is the interstitial fluid and all that it carries, and cells, white blood cells, that are found inside of the lymph nodes are going to clean out this fluid and remove the antigens and the waste and the debris. And then that fluid is able to carry on through the lymphatic vessels and enter the bloodstream and then re-enter the heart. So you can imagine that since it has to go through the heart, it's very important that all of the antigens and microbes and things that can cause infection need to be removed so that the very important organ of our body, the heart, is protected. Now, how does this fluid go through the tubes? Well, there are some smooth muscles that are going to contract and kind of help to push this fluid through the lymphatic vessels. But also the vessels have these valves that are found on the inside. These valves are one-way valves, and they're kind of shaped like, think of it as like a little M. And when fluid is coming up, it pushes on the underside of the flaps of the valves, and it's going to push the valve open so that the fluid can come right through. And then if gravity pulls that fluid back down, the fluid will come down, push on the flap, and close it like so, so that the fluid can't fall backwards back down into the bottom and start collecting in the periphery. So in this way, the lymphatic system is going to help regulate the fluid that we have in our tissues, because we don't want all of this fluid to just constantly collect there. Otherwise, we'd have really chubby, swollen hands and feet and ankles. So the lymphatic system is going to carry this excess fluid away and allow it to re-enter our bloodstream. And it's also a way to ensure that our blood volume remains relatively constant, thereby keeping our blood pressure constant as well. And then, like I said, the lymph is going to leave the lymphatic system and enter into the subclavian veins, which are veins that are below the clavicle. That's what subclavian is telling us. And then also the internal jugular veins. This picture is showing you where some of the clusters of the lymph nodes are found. You can see that they are, especially here in the groin, you're going to have clusters bilateral to the sternum, so it's going to they're going to be close to the lung tissue and the heart, and then also here in the face. So the blood that's or the lymph, excuse me, that's coming back from the brain is also going to be kind of cleaned out by these lymph nodes. So let's take a look at some of these lymph nodes that I've been talking about. I've got two pictures here, and the top one is just showing us where clusters of lymph nodes are found. They each have different names, and then they're colored differently. Here, sometimes you can, if you're feeling sick, you may you or your clinician may palpate on either side of your neck, looking to see if there's any swollen nodes there. And in the head especially, we have a lot of different openings to the environment. So, the facial area is just a really easy way for antigens to enter our body. So we have a lot of them in this area. Now, down at the bottom, I have a cross section of a lymph node. You could see that we have one lymphatic vessel coming in and one coming out. And I know that this one is one that's going to allow fluid to enter into the lymph node because of the direction of the valves that I see here. So you can imagine that as fluid comes through, it's going to push those valves open so that the fluid can come into the lymph node and then run its way through. If it were going in the other direction, it would push these valves closed and the fluid would not be permitted to travel backwards. And so the fluid is going to come in. This is called the afferent lymphatic vessel, and it's going to allow the lymph to enter into the blood vessel. Over here, you can see that we have some white blood cells here. T cells, B cells, macrophages, and they are waiting for antigens to come in through to come in along with that lymph so that they can phagocytize them, destroy them, and depending on the cell, can even initiate the specific immune response, again, depending upon which cell the antigen encounters. And then once the fluid flows through the lymph node and is now all clean, it's going to exit through the efferent vessel. And again, I know that this is the exit point because of the orientation of the flaps of this valve here. So here you can see that the fluid can come through, but if it were to creep back in the opposite direction, it would actually push the flaps of the valve closed, and the fluid would not be able to return backwards into the lymph node. And then this is another drawing of what a lymph node looks like. And here you can see that we have different zones that have different kinds of cells there, just waiting for antigens to come in so that they can destroy them. Or, like I said, initiate a more specific immune response. In this particular drawing, so that this big circle here, there's your lymph node, and it's got 3 afferent lymphatic vessels entering in, and then we have 1 efferent lymphatic vessel going out. And so this is all like one-way direction here. So in through the afferent and out through the efferent. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here, and then I will continue talking about the immune response in part 2.